build in the cry time. And I said I didn't, so if we run a little bit long, I didn't factor that in. Debbie and I are humbled and honored to be here. Thank you for this opportunity, and especially Mother's Club. And I'm a super blessed man to be married to a great lady and a great mom. And thank you for all that you do as moms. We truly thank you. So, if you didn't figure out, I'm John.
I'm Debbie.
I wanted to recognize a couple other co-stars of our journey. 2 of our 5 boys are here with us today. Our oldest, Brendan, and our third, Garrett, and his fiancee, Rachel. Thank you for coming. So today there's a little bit of times where it's somber maybe, and other times I hope ultimately that we're inspiring. So we want to take you today on a journey of faith, hope, and love. And I don't know if you caught some of the chorus. I know there'll be days when this life brings me pain, but if that's what it takes to praise you, Jesus, bring the rain. When we face life's challenges and tribulations, do we really ask Jesus to bring the rain? Or do we ask, why me, God? I know I did. I always did. Until the fall of 2006, when we were at a church service in St. Louis, and the title of that service was, Why Not Me? And the pastor challenged us. He said, well, if you have Christ in your heart, if you have eternity in your heart, then why aren't you going through life asking God, why not me? Versus why me? And he challenged us saying, why should you have pain and sorrow and not me? Why should your child have cancer and not mine? Why should you face grief and not us? And when we got to the car, now our boys were 11 and under, so imagine if anybody that has boys having them quiet. It's not often, especially when they're young. And we got to the car, and it was literally dead silent. It was eerily silent. And I looked at Debbie and I said, did you feel like that was meant for us? And she said, oh my goodness, I did. I felt like we were the only ones there, and that he was speaking directly to us. And we knew right then that something was going to happen in our lives. We didn't know what, but we knew that God was preparing us for something. And he was challenging us to go through it with the attitude of, why not me? And in January 2007, a few months later, I was called into my boss's office on my 40th birthday, so you can do the math quick. And he informed me that a promotion he had promised me, he wasn't going to give me. And one that I felt like I had long earned. And he told me, I had a choice to make. I could stay with the company and take a role, or I could leave, and he'd give me an exit package. And it was a tough decision. I was a little bit upset, angry, and I was talking to some of my friends and Christian brothers, and one said, so let me get this straight. They're not going to make you take a pay cut, right? I said, no. You're going to work less? Yep. And so why are you leaving? Are you even thinking about it? And he said, is this about your ego or about doing the right thing? And I realized then it was about my ego. So I humbled myself and I stayed. And praise God, I stayed.
So then I was thinking, okay, well, we got over that. That wasn't that bad. And we were sitting playing on the floor. At the time, Carson was 3, and I had a younger son, Derek, who was 2. And Carson kept looking up and he kept smiling. I'm like, Carson, what are you looking at? And he's like, well, my angels, Mommy. And I said, well, what do you mean your angels? And he said, well, my angels, they're always with me. And so I said, well, what do your angels look like? And he described them in great detail. And I was like, okay. And when John got home, I said, John, Carson's seeing angels. What do you think? And Carson was on the autism spectrum. And so he was a very literal kid. So he really didn't do make-believe. So we knew that he was seeing angels. And so a few weeks later, same thing. He starts looking up and smiling and says his angels are there and describes them in the exact same way. And we're talking, we're like, okay, I don't know what this means, but I think something's gonna happen. And then Carson woke up one morning and he said, Mommy, will you kiss my legs hurt. So I kissed his legs and we went downstairs and fed him and was getting ready for preschool and went to take him out of his high chair and his legs buckled. And he said, my legs really hurt, Mommy, I don't know if I can walk. And so I called the pediatrician and we started the whole process of, we got x-rays and they thought maybe nothing was broke, so then they thought maybe he had a viral in his hips and then possibly arthritis, and we went for about 2 months from doctor to doctor and just kept pressing and pressing, and over this time we just kept getting sicker and sicker to the point that he could no longer walk. So we finally saw a rheumatologist who said, we need to figure this out, we're gonna do some more scans. And so they had the scan scheduled for Friday the 13th in April 2007. And John was there and we were just sitting there waiting and waiting. It was hours and hours and just praying and waiting and hoping we would figure out what was going on.
So I'd ask you to close your eyes and come on now, you gotta play along with me. I'm not asking you to run a marathon. So close your eyes. And you saw the beautiful pictures of Carson, but all of you have children in your lives. I want you to think of the child in your life, and I want you to picture that child at age 3, and how sweet they are, and how innocent they are, how much you love them. And as you're thinking of that image, I want you to picture that child on a hospital bed, and it's dimly lit. And the doctor says, I'm sorry to tell you, your child has cancer. And you open your eyes and you think you were dreaming and you say, I didn't hear you. And he says, your child has cancer. And not only is it cancer, but it's stage 4 high-risk neuroblastoma, a rare childhood cancer. And not only does he have a stage 4 cancer, but he's covered head to toe. And he has lesions on his spine and his skull, and his bone marrow is almost all tumor. And that day on Friday the 13th, ironically, I remember him lying there and looking at me. He was so angelic and so sweet. And I just prayed and wept over him, and I said, Lord, please, don't let him suffer. Whatever happens, if you take him today, if you take him tomorrow, if you take him 10 years from now, if you take him a lifetime from now, please don't let him suffer. It's at those moments you have to make a choice. Are you going to stand on God's promises or your own? Are you going to ask God, why me or why not me? And God gave us a couple fundamental scriptures that we stood on his promises. One is, be joyful in hope, patient in affliction, and faithful in prayer. That's from Romans 12:12, and Romans 8:28 says, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him, who have been called according to his purpose.
So they gave us no hope and said to take him home and we would have 30 days at the most with him. And I wasn't ready to let him go and to give up that easily. So I asked for a second opinion, and they contacted St. Jude Children's Research Hospital in Memphis, Tennessee, and they set up a conference call with one of the doctors there, and she was on the phone with us for over 2 hours, answered every question we had, and told us things that we had no idea about. I didn't even know that time stage 4 was the worst. I didn't know that much about cancer, and so at the end I said to Dr. McGregor, I said, you're a mom, if it was your child, what would you do? And she said, I'd pack my bags and be here tomorrow. And so that's exactly what we did. So we packed our bags, and John and I took Carson, and we headed to Memphis, Tennessee. At the time we were in Illinois, and we embarked in this new protocol that was experimental, And we found out when we got there that Carson was the last child accepted into that protocol. So had we waited one more day, he wouldn't have been able to be at St. Jude Hospital.
And he never would have received that protocol. So as we tell our story, you'll hear these moments and you go, is that coincidence or was that God? Right? And come back to my job choice. Imagine now, this is 2 months later. Had I left, we'd have no health insurance. We'd have 5 little boys, and I'd have no job. And praise God, we had a job and health insurance. And we were glad, and we were in Memphis, and Carson had 30 days of induction chemotherapy, 30 days of experimental chemotherapy, and after the 30 days, he needed scans to tell us if anything was going well or if things had gone poorly. And the day of his scans, St. Jude is an amazing place, and they provide housing and everything, but they can only accommodate up to 4 people in their housing. So myself and some of the boys would leave every night at 10, and we'd be back the next morning early. We came back the next morning early, and I walked in, and Debbie whispered to me, she said, go ask Carson if he had a visitor last night. I said, well, what do you mean? I started getting a visitor. I left at 10 when they closed, and I got that look that all husbands know. And it was, go ask him if he had a visitor last night. So I dutifully marched right over. And he was watching his favorite show, Diego, if you've ever seen that. And I kneeled down in front of him, and I looked at him, and he's peering around me at Diego. And I said, Carson, did you have a visitor last night? And he comes back and he looks at me, he says, yes, Daddy. Back to Diego. And I said, Carson, who visited you last night? And he comes back over and he looks at me and he says, it gets a smile, and he says, Jesus, Daddy. I was not expecting that answer. And my dumb question, right, could there be any dumber, was, well, what did Jesus look like? I'm thinking, nobody knows what Jesus looks like. I wonder what he looks like. And he looks at me and he says, Daddy, he has really big hands. I said, really? I said, well, Carson, what do you look like? And he said, Daddy, he had really big hands, and he told me they were healing hands, and he held me in them and told me he loved me. So Debbie explained to me then that Carson had shook her awake during the night. Now this kid was our best sleeper. He never woke up, ever. And he was shaking her, saying, Mommy, Jesus loves me. Mommy, Jesus loves me. And he was all excited. And Debbie said, honey, what are you talking about? Mommy, Jesus loves me. And she said, well, how do you know? And he said, he visited you, Mommy. And he had really big hands, and he held me in them and told me they were healing hands, and he loved me. So needless to say, the scans were pretty miraculous. We went in, and the cancer had regressed dramatically. The tumor on his adrenal gland had shrunk dramatically, but he still had a tremendous uphill battle. He had to face surgery next, and the surgery was a very difficult surgery. They literally, Carson had a scar from one side all the way to the other side. They cut his whole abdomen open. And originally they said you should be prepared that it would be at least an 8-hour surgery. After the scans, they said, we saw some regression. We think that it might only be 4 to 6 hours. Now, what of course they don't tell you is there's a parents network, and the parents all talk, and we knew that one of the children that would face the same surgery had died a few weeks earlier. And then during the surgery, and another child at the 2-hour mark, they came out and told the parents that they couldn't remove the tumor without the risk of the child dying. So we went into the surgery knowing that, and we were praying, we were in the waiting room, and the phone rings at what time? Exactly 2 hours. And I pick it up, and I'm thinking the worst. Pardon me, the nurse says, we're done, Mr. Higgins. I was like, what do you mean you're done? And she said, well, we're done. I said, is everything okay? And I can't tell you, you have to wait for the doctor. He'll be right out. And the doors come open, and the doctor comes out, and he's one of the foremost doctors in pediatric surgery, and he's also the most stoic, boring man we've ever met. And he comes out, and he has this huge smile on his face, and he said, it was a miracle. He said, I opened them up, and the tumor had completely encapsulated itself. It had separated itself from all the organs it was attached to, and veins and the arteries. It's like I literally just had to scoop it out. So we knew that God was with us.
So we were at St. Jude. Carson had done 9 months of chemo. He had his surgery, and then he did a bone marrow transplant, and then we're on to radiation. And for me, radiation was the hardest thing in all the treatment that he had. He was by then 4, and every day he had to be sedated. When they would sedate him, then they would tape his eyes shut. They would have to bound his arms above his head, and he actually had a tattoo on him, and it made a cross, and that's where they would line him up when he went back for radiation. And then they would leave him there and shut this huge lead door, and everyone would leave. They'd watch him on the screen, and he would get his radiation. Well, Carson had 3 weeks of this, and so he had become a pro at it. And he loved to pack his snack bag, and in the morning he'd ask, Mommy, can I eat today? And I'd say, no, we have radiation. And so at 4 years old, he'd be like, okay, Mommy. And sometimes radiation wasn't until 3 in the afternoon, never complained once. We'd get into the room, he'd like to dim the lights, he'd hop up onto the bed, and he'd put his O2 sensor on and his oxygen mask. And he would lay down and he'd tell the doctors, anesthesiologists, nurses, okay, I'm ready. And then one day he lay down, he did the whole process, and he sits up and he takes his mask off and he goes, Mommy, you know Jesus made me, right? I said, yeah, Carson, I know. And so he lay back down, and he gets back up and takes it off again. He goes, well, Mommy, you know Jesus made everyone in this room, right? I said, yeah, okay, yeah. And he goes, well, Mommy, tell them Jesus made them. And so, they start getting a tear in their eye, and I said, Jesus made you guys, and trying to be careful, like I didn't want to push too much faith on people, and so Carson lays down, and he sits up one more time, and he goes, Mommy, when I'm in the radiation room, I'm never alone. Jesus is always with me, holding my hand. And so for me, it was like Carson went through this, ministering to us, ministering to the staff, and helping us go through this and make the journey so much easier than what it could have been. And he really talked about his angels throughout. He would say to the nurses, my angels told me I need to eat. Can you get me something? My angels told me I should get out of bed and start walking. And so he just talked about it all the time. We were getting ready after radiation to recover. We had been at St. Jude's living there for 15 months. And he was NED, and we were ready to go home and just waiting for his counts to recover. And I said to Carson, you haven't talked about your angels lately. I said, because he was talking about them all the time. And he goes, well, Mommy, Jesus told them their work here was done, and they've gone to help someone else. So we went home, and he did another 18 months of oral chemo, but life was great. He was an avid reader. He was a gifted child. He started snowboarding and was in the Boy Scouts and youth group, and he was just the kindest kid, loved life. He was always giving back to others. He joined Rachel's Challenge and Kids for Kids, and people would send him gifts for his birthday, and he would give them to others. Just an amazing kid. In November of 2015, Carson started getting sick again. He actually got whooping cough. I don't know what the chances of that are, but he got whooping cough, and he was riding horses at Victory Gallop, therapeutic riding, and he got up one day and he had a tear in his eye. He said, my back really hurts. And he was recovering from the whooping cough, and I thought, well, maybe it was that, but again, my motherly instinct just said there's something wrong. And again, I felt like God was preparing me, and I knew at that time that Carson had relapsed. So after going to the ER for 2 days straight and advocating for him and struggling, we finally got some scans, and he had relapsed. And he needed emergency surgery because the tumor was pinching on his spine, and he would have been paralyzed within hours to days if we hadn't had the surgery. So had we gone longer, it would have been a different story. But I had to tell him he was 12, that he relapsed, and he said, well, Mom, God healed me once. If he wants to, he can heal me again. Not a tear, didn't feel sorry for himself. He's just, okay, like, it was just a matter of fact. And we were airlifted to St. Jude Children's Hospital on Thanksgiving Day, and Carson and I flew down, and John and the boys rushed down and drove down, and they were there a few days and got them all settled in. We started treatment, and the boys had to go back. They were in working, college, school. John had work, and they're all crying, and they say their goodbyes, and they leave, and Carson goes to me, he goes, Mom, tell them to come back in here. So I run out, I get them, and they come back in, and he goes, guys, it's not my funeral. Start saying some jokes, start smiling, we're gonna get through this, and you're not gonna be crying through all my treatments. So that's just kind of the way he was. He led us through his journey, even to the point where we were doing a St. Jude interview for the Dream Home, and Carson had to have these antibodies that were just, his cancer was cancer of the nervous system, and so it attacks your nervous system. And so these were extremely painful. He was doing this chemo and radiation all at the same time. And so I was saying in this interview, and he's sitting next to me, and I said, yeah, it's been really tough. He was in the hospital for 3 weeks. He lost 17 pounds. He was so sick. And Carson interrupts me. He goes, Mom, what are you talking about? It's not that bad. It could be so much worse. And so here's this kid that really led us through, and it was difficult. I can't say it wasn't difficult, but he helped with us.
And it was God's, we knew at some point that it turned from a journey to God's story. It was his story, and it wasn't a story we necessarily wanted, but it was a story that we realized quickly he entrusted us with. And in Father's Day of 2016, we had come back from a weekend together. We were able to get away for a few short days, just the family, the boys, and Debbie and I, and we got back, and we sat with the doctors, and we heard the words we didn't want to hear. Carson's cancer had spread, and he had lesions in his liver and his lungs, and we knew he was terminal. And try and get through this, it always my whole life wanted to write a poem, and I had zero creativity and zero ability to write a poem, or much of anything else that's creative. And I was sitting outside at the house we were staying in Memphis. It was a beautiful sunny day, and I just started typing, and I could feel God's Spirit pouring through me, and tears were coming up, streaming into my computer. And this is the poem I wrote. As I ponder my existence and the fate that awaits my son, I think of you, my Lord, and the great things you have done. You have prepared me for almost 10 years to be ready for the words I didn't want to hear. Long ago, you told me to trust and to have hope that was above all of us. You told me not to ask why me, but instead to trust you faithfully. I have lived with a trusting spirit, and with your strength and promise not to fear it. But here I am today, grieving at the words the doctors had to say. I thank you for your unfailing love and your promises from above. I thank you for your strength and for the hope of eternity that awaits. I thank you for my sons and the road you have shared. I ask that Carson would be spared. If not his life, O Lord, then please spare your child from pain. And one day I know you will explain the hurt and sorrow we must bear, knowing that eternity does not spare not even one, not even your son, from the pain and misery of this life. But if we have faith and trust in you, we will have eternity in paradise. So I ask for your mercy and grace as we tread upon this difficult place. For though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I know it is you that gives every breath. So whether it is many or few, I know they all belong to you. So if your plan is to take Carson home, give us strength and courage, for we are not alone. For through your grace and sacrifice, we will have together eternal life. For this day I do not fear, for I feel your presence near. I know your plan is perfect, and with forever secured, I am ready for your path and my pain endured. I ask one more request. Please spare my boy any unrest. And give him comfort and forever with you. And one day we will see that your love and sacrifice endures eternally. Thank you for the son of mine and for the time we have had on earth, securing forever because of your love divine. I do not fear death because I know you triumph over our foe. So I know in death you win, and no matter what, I will see him again. I cannot lie because my heart does grieve. So I ask your spirit to relieve the pain and suffering we now face. And please, Lord, carry us to a better place.
So when we found out that Carson was terminal, we asked him what he wanted to do. And he wanted to take a trip. So we started planning this trip quickly, and the doctors were helping us. And it was a Friday afternoon, and we were getting our checkups and getting ready we were gonna head out the following week. And I said to the doctor, and she's a Christian mother, I said, my gut is just telling me there's something like wrong, and we need to do something before we leave. She said, he just had scans, you're good, go on the trip, don't worry. Later that afternoon, she called me and she's like, it just has been bugging me all day. I need to listen to you. I threw a scan on your schedule at 4 o'clock. Go get an MRI. We'll all feel better, and then you can leave on your trip next week. So she gives me a call at like 6 o'clock that night. She had her kids in her car. She was home. She's like, I couldn't wait to call you. She said, you need to get him to the emergency room. His tumor has doubled since last week, and it's pressing on his spine. And if he doesn't have emergency surgery, he's gonna be paralyzed within the next couple days. So had she not listened to her motherly instinct and my motherly instinct, we would have left for our trip and Carson would have been paralyzed within the first couple of days. And I just can't even imagine not having that time that we had together.
And it was amazing because, again, not a coincidence, the surgeon that was on call, so this was a Friday and they wanted to do the surgery on a Saturday morning. The surgeon that was on call was the foremost surgeon for this type of surgery in the world. He was the leading surgeon, and he happened to be on call that day for Carson's surgery. So we said, we're gonna take some advice from Tim McGraw. We're gonna live like you were dying. Heard that song, and we wanted to go on this trip. We called it a trip of a lifetime, and God had already orchestrated it years ago when I moved here from St. Louis. When we moved here from St. Louis, I got a call from the superintendent of the Cuyahoga National Forest, and he said, Mr. Higgins, we're having problems with your service. And by the way, there'll be a table in the back. If you're having problems with charter, I'll take your name. And he said, could you help me? And I said, well, of course. I went over and met him, and we became friends and friends with the staff. So when Carson, when Carson was terminal, we had nothing planned. And if you've ever tried to go to national parks in an RV, you have to literally get the campsites a year or more in advance. And I was telling the story, and I could hear him sobbing on the other side of the phone. He said, do you have an itinerary? I said, yeah, I do. And he said, send it to me and leave. He said, just trust me and go. So we packed up the boys. We bought an RV, packed up the boys, and off we went. And it was for the almost 5 of the most amazing weeks we had ever had. And along the way, Carson wanted to see the national parks, but he also wanted to see the 7 man-made wonders of America. And he had a couple left, and we planned to see those on the way. And along the way, Carson, the Rangers would do amazing things. They knew the story. So the first place was the Badlands, and the Chief Ranger met us on I-90 and brought us in and had a campsite and had a helicopter waiting to take Carson and our family into the Badlands so he could see the Badlands by helicopter. And then we went to Mount Rushmore, and Carson received his first challenge coin. And for those that don't know what a challenge coin is, it's a military law enforcement tradition that people have coins minted that are special to them. They represent them in some special way, and they give them out for special reasons. And if you were a commanding officer and you gave it to a subordinate, you would know that that meant something more than anything because I got that coin. And in the olden days, you would challenge each other with your coins, and the loser had to buy the winner a beer, so to speak. And Carson knew he couldn't do that, so he challenged people for ice cream along the way. And the Chief Ranger at Mount Rushmore said, Carson, I want to give you a really special coin. Only 8 of these have ever been given out in the history of the United States, and they've only been given to the 8 people that have ever gone over the face of Mount Rushmore and worked on it. And I want you to have the 9th one. And then we kept our trip, and we kept seeing different things, and one of the man-made wonders that he wanted to see was the Golden Gate Bridge. So the Rangers put together, they had to coordinate 4 different law enforcement agencies to open a special lighthouse for Carson and our family to see the Golden Gate Bridge from a special place. And the Chief Ranger called and he said, Mr. Higgins, I have a special day, just meet us at the front of your campsite at 8 a.m. So we get to the front of the campsite, and there's 2 California Highway patrolmen on motorcycles and 2 Petaluma patrolmen on motorcycles. And they say hi to Carson, and Carson immediately challenges them with his coin. And the California Highway patrolman says, I'm ready for you, man. He's like, I got my coin. And it had his badge on one side and the Golden Gate Bridge on the other side. And the Petaluma officer says, oh my gosh, Carson, I feel terrible. I didn't know. I didn't bring a coin. And he said, wait a minute. And he unbuttons his shirt, and he starts digging around in his bulletproof vest, and he pulls out this coin. And it says, police officer's prayer on it. And he said, Carson, I've had this coin over my heart for 22 years of law enforcement. I hoped one day it would stop a bullet to my heart, but I'd rather you had it today. And he handed it to myself. So those were just some of the amazing things, amazing experiences we got to have along this trip. And along the way, Debbie and I said, Carson, would you like to have your own challenge coin made? And he was so excited. He wanted to have it made. He carried all these coins in a wallet in his pocket every day. And we had one minted. And we said, we'll send these back when we get home, and we'll send them back to all the Rangers and give them to special people in your life.
And he helped design it. It was all things that meant things to him, and he wanted a cross on it, and Boy Scouts, St. Jude, and different things. So we had an amazing 4-week trip. We had some ups and downs. We had on a cruise. He wanted to take a cruise in Alaska, and we were with the captain of the ship, and Carson's legs buckled, and he was passing out, and so we had to go into the emergency area and debating whether to take him in, was it his back or what, so they gave him a ton of red Gatorade, try and hydrate him, see if that's what it was. And so he noticed that he had a red Gatorade mustache, and at this time he was in a wheelchair, we were pushing him around, and he goes, "Mom, everyone keeps staring at me because I have this red Gatorade mustache." I'm like, "Carson, they're staring at you because you're a bald kid in a wheelchair." He's like, "Oh yeah, that too, okay, yeah." He never even thought of himself as sick, he really didn't. And so we had just this amazing family time in a camper for 4 weeks with me and 6 males. I can't always say it smelled the best, but no cell phones, and just this incredible trip that we were just so blessed to have. We had to stop at hospitals along the way to get blood transfusions and platelets and IV fluids and different things. And so we were in Las Vegas. Our next day we were gonna go to the Hoover Dam in Grand Canyon. And so we were at the Children's Hospital, and we were there for 12 hours. And we got done at 2:30 in the morning. So we're driving down the Las Vegas Strip, and Garrett was with me and Carson at 12 now, goes, "Mom, did you ever think you'd have your 12-year-old son on the Las Vegas Strip at 2:30 in the morning?" And I said, "No, Carson, I really didn't think so." And so we got back to the camper, and John was waiting for us.
So we brought him in. He was exhausted. You could tell he was just really tired, and we got him to bed. And I had this restless spirit, I just couldn't sleep. And that morning, early morning, as dawn awoke, I heard Carson struggling, and he was unresponsive, and we carried him outside, and we started CPR on him. And as luck would have it, the sprinkler system started, and right there, as we were giving CPR, and the paramedics arrived, and they took Carson and Debbie to the hospital, and the boys and I raced behind them, and they continued doing CPR for 90 more minutes. And the doctor said, "Mr. Higgins, I'm sorry, we have to call it." And Brendan heard him and said, "Well, doctor, could we pray together first?" And he said, "Of course you can." So they kept CPR up, and we prayed. And as we're praying, the heartbeat you heard, a bump. All of a sudden, the machine, boom, boom, and you can see everybody in the room just kind of pause, and the staff back away from him, and his blood pressure came up, and his heart continued, and he stabilized. He never gained consciousness. But the doctor came over, and he was very surprised. He looked at us, and he said, "Boy, that boy's a real fighter." He said, "That's a miracle." And they say the last sensory that you lose before you die is hearing, that you can hear. So we said to each boy, "You should go talk to Carson." And each boy went, and they talked to Carson, and then I talked to Carson. And last was his most amazing favorite person on earth, his mom. And there's pictures of Mom and Debbie that when you see them, you just realize there was this amazing special bond between them.
So as the boys were talking to Carson, and then John, I just kept feeling like God was telling me, I have to be the one to let him go. So I went over and I talked to Carson, and I just said, "Carson, I love you so much. Thank you so much for fighting to be with us and to stay with us. But it's okay to be with Jesus and go to heaven. We'll be okay." And as soon as I said that, his heartbeat stopped. And we knew that that's where he wanted to be. And we knew we would be okay because we knew that that's where Carson wanted to be. And honestly, he's the lucky one, right? And grief is hard. It was hard. I can't even imagine anything harder than losing a child and then being a mother and trying to mother your other boys that have just lost their brother and a husband that lost his son. But without faith, we wouldn't have been able to get through it. I asked if we could donate his organs, because I knew the type of kid, if you haven't figured out yet, he was so kind and giving and wanted to pay it forward always, if we could donate his organs. And they said no because of the cancer. Well, we got a phone call the next day and said, we actually know how much it meant to you, so he can donate his corneas. And Carson was the biggest reader. Anyone that would ever see him, he always had a book on him, and he was always reading. So for us to be able to give the gift of sight, it went to 2 young people in their 20s. It was just an incredible pay it forward moment that it blessed us, it blessed others, and it actually comes back full circle.
Yeah, because we were, you're sitting in Las Vegas and you're hit by this freight train and you don't know what to do. You know, you gotta figure out how do I get his body home? You know, logistical issues, let alone the grief. And my phone rings and it's a person, a lady, and she says, you know, I'm from a company in Cleveland called FlexJet. Unbeknownst to us, Fox 8 did this amazingly beautiful story on Carson and our family that morning on the news and said our St. Jude ambassador had died and we need to get Carson and his family home. And the lady from FlexJet said, we saw your story and we want to get you and your family home. And we're gonna send a plane to Las Vegas to pick you guys up and bring you home. And I said, ma'am, I can't afford a private jet. And she said, there's no charge. We're gonna get you home and treat you and Carson respectfully and your family. And we later found out that her son was battling retinoblastoma, the cancer of the eyes, and Carson had just donated his corneas. And so we're on the plane home, and the pilots, I'm telling them the story, like I'm telling you, and they're crying and sobbing. I don't know how they were flying the plane. They unfortunately put it on the pilots. And they had called the FAA and explained the circumstances. And the last 2 things that Carson really wanted to see was the Hoover Dam and the Grand Canyon. And that's where we were headed the day he died. And so the FAA gave this jet the authority to fly over the Hoover Dam. Now, post 911, nobody gets to go near the Hoover Dam, right? So they wanted to make sure our family and Carson saw the Hoover Dam. And then they gave us the permission to fly down the middle of the Grand Canyon, the entire way. No plane's been allowed in the Grand Canyon airspace since there was a massive collision in the early 70s. So I'm up there and the FAA comes out and they said, hey, why are you at 18,000 feet? Take them down to 12,000 feet. So we descended and I have some beautiful pictures if anyone wants to see them of the Grand Canyon as we flew right down the middle of the Grand Canyon. And we celebrated Carson's life and we stood on Why Not Me. We said, we know why not. We know why God chose us. He entrusted us. And we stood on this promise from Revelation, and God shall wipe away all tears from their eyes. There shall be no more death, no more sorrow, no crying. Neither shall there be any more pain. And his 1-year anniversary of passing, we were thinking about how do we celebrate his life. He lived such an amazing life, and he paid it forward to so many people and touched so many lives. When he died, hundreds of thousands of people reached out to us from all over the world. We didn't know. We had blogged our story. We had shared our faith, and from all over the world, people reached out to us to tell us how Carson's story had touched them and changed them. And we were debating. We weren't angry. We were sad. But how do we use this story? And we said, well, let's throw together a golf outing and dinner and see what happens. And within 30 days, we had a golf outing and we raised almost $150,000. And we had no idea. And we knew that God wanted us to continue doing something special. So as we continued reflecting on all the love and kindness that God showered us with through people over the years, all the experiences from literally people delivering meals 3 to 5 nights for 52 straight weeks when we were in Memphis. They delivered them to our house 52 straight weeks. They said, we don't want you to think about ever mowing your lawn. And on Mother's Day that year, 3 older boys were still in St. Louis, and my neighbor called me and said, that I was down with Debbie, with Derek and Carson, and they said, we can't bear to have Debbie not have her boys on Mother's Day. And so we're gonna drive them down to Memphis tomorrow and surprise Debbie. So they packed the boys up, drove them 4 hours, over 4 hours to Memphis, gave Debbie the best Mother's Day present ever, gave her a kiss, and they drove 4 hours back to celebrate Mother's Day with their kids. And it was one after the other, and we said, well, we need to create a foundation. We gotta create this foundation. In 2017, we created the Carson Higgins Memorial Foundation. And actually, since then, we've raised over $500,000. And we've gifted, as Lisa said earlier, a lot of money to many different organizations. And at Pinnacle this last year, we were blessed. University Hospital Rainbow Babies approached us and they said, hey, there's this amazing new technology that's never been used anywhere in the world. It's called augmented therapy. And we'd love to have your foundation think about sponsoring it. And so we did, and it was fully implemented. We gave the hospital $150,000 through the blessings of people, of others. And now all these kids and all these others struggling to battle chronic, life-threatening illnesses at University Rainbow get the most amazing physical therapy in the world. The child actually gets immersed into an online experience and they want to do physical therapy. So imagine going through chemo and radiation, you don't feel good. No kid wants to get out of bed and walk a tightrope or ride a bike, right, generally. Now they're getting up, they can't wait to do physical therapy, which is something they really need as they battle these. So I want to end today by challenging you. And why not me? Everyone has a story, right? Everyone goes through pain and sorrow in life. Everyone is one heartbeat away from eternity. What's your eternity? Are you going to stand on the promises of Christ? Are you going to face pain and sorrow asking, why me or why not me? Are you going to give generously and be kind and loving? We pray today that maybe we have touched your heart, that you will join us in living each day trying to be more Christ-like. If you'd like to check out our foundation, we'd love to have you do that. It's on the World Wide Web, carsonstrong.org. So it's pretty easy, carsonstrong.org. If you go all the way to the bottom and you want to continue following us, we do a newsletter every month and we talk about upcoming events and things we're doing. You can sign up and we'll mail it and you'll automatically get that. And we'd love for you to come and enjoy some of our events. We like to, believe it or not, I know I cried a lot today, but we like to have fun. And we like to have our events be fun. And we have a dinner in April and our golf outing in September. And we do some other fun things along the way. We're gonna run the marathon in Akron. We're one of the Blue Line charities. We were chosen as a charity to support the marathon. So.
And if you know Susan, she's joining. She's on our board,
yes.
And she's running with us, Susan Figler. And there are business cards out front that crawling.
And if we bomb today, it's Susan's fault. Susan, thank you for helping us to get here today. This has been an honor and a blessing for us. We hope it's been the same for you, and thank you for your time today, and we look forward to having lunch with you.
And we hope that you don't leave sad. I know it's tears, and I know it's a sad story, but we want it to be more inspirational in that it's sad, but that you take that sadness and you can choose different paths, right? You can choose to be angry and mad and sad, or you can use a situation to glorify God and continue to live your life in a great way.
So thank you. God bless.